What is everybody? Welcome back to another FTN NBA live stream. We're here on a Saturday, 3-game slate, so we shortened up the stream a little bit. I mean, you guys don't want to hear the dead air. Like if we were on here for an hour and a half or an hour, it'd be a lot of nothing. There's 3 games, and I think it's three pretty good games actually. I'll give it that. And I feel like now at the end of NBA season, you either have good games from a DFS perspective where everybody's out and you can get some really good value, or you have good real life games, and I think there are a couple of those tonight, or you just have games that you should never even bother watching. But anything that you want to bring to the table, Mr. Adam Pfeifer, how you doing on this Saturday?
Yeah, you mentioned like games where it's just like everybody's out and anybody that like just goes like they go to the NBA games and they're not fully aware of like the depth charts and the rotations and stuff. Like
Yeah.
that Milwaukee game the other night. It's like you bought tickets for that, like say you bought tickets for that game 2 weeks in advance. And all of a sudden and you see it's like, oh, Paul George is back. So at least Paul George, and then it's just everybody's out. But yeah, April NBA is like you always have to kind of be on the lookout for late scratches and all that stuff. Players resting every month, pretty much in NBA. But April, it's just a different situation in the month of April.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like to be like a casual fan, like, and I know like a lot of casual fans can really be in depth with their knowledge, but like if you're someone that just catches games here and there, or if you're someone that just goes to the game, like the big names, and you walked into a stadium and saw what the Thunder were rolling out last night, you're like, what the hell's going on? But yeah, it's just that kind of time of the year. But we did just get starters for the Nets. It's going to be Kyrie Irving, Patty Mills, Kessler Edwards, Kevin Durant, and Andre Drummond. So Seth Curry obviously ruled out alongside Bruce Brown and Goran Dragic already. So that's going to be the first game we talk about here, Brooklyn and Atlanta. Obviously, that's a lot of the Nets news. In terms of Atlanta, Trae Young is questionable, but it sounds like he's going to play. He's been announced available as of I think 10 minutes ago or so he should be good to go. John Collins remains out. Both teams obviously trying to win here. Both teams are fighting for those last couple spots. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, like I thought Seth Curry was going to play because he's been questionable for like 4 games in a row with the ankle, but still played. And I wrote him up in first look because I thought it was a good spot for him under 5K. You look at the matchup, Atlanta allows the most points per game, points per possession, and highest field goal percentage off screens. According to our advanced DVP tool, they are 30th against shooters. So that hurts, obviously, that Curry's not there, but like maybe on a slate that only has 3 games, value will be a lot tougher to find. So Patty Mills, he's completely fallen off from what he did earlier in the season, and Durant and Kyrie are healthy, but like at 3K on this slate, if he plays upwards of 25 minutes potentially with Bruce Brown also out, I think given the minutes whatever minutes he gets, given the matchup I just laid out for Curry, the same matchup pretty much applies for Patty Mills, who's actually been scoring more off screens with Brooklyn than Curry has since he joined Brooklyn. So, but obviously like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, that's where you start here. I prefer Durant here. He's also been scoring a lot off screens compared to Kyrie Irving. They're both going to be great, but I prefer Durant. And yeah, like I really wanted Curry to play. I thought he would play, but not going to happen.
Yeah, I also listed Curry in the article that came out, I think, around 5. I did say that if we were to see Curry out, it's going to obviously lead to a big boost for Patty Mills. I didn't know if he was guaranteed to be in the starting lineup, but he is. And he was probably going to get the minutes regardless. By the minutes, I mean more minutes than he's been seeing over the past couple of weeks here. Now I have him for 32 minutes, 33 minutes. He's probably going to shoot a good amount, but like this is not the same spot that Patty Mills was in earlier when we saw him pop for those ceiling games where Durant was hurt and Kyrie wasn't able to play at home, and especially that time where they traded Harden and there was kind of that dead period for the Nets where Patty Mills was like the only guy taking shots. It's not quite that scenario, but he's also now the min price on DraftKings and 3,700 on FanDuel, so definitely in play
Yeah, I
as a
mean the
value option.
last time he played 30 plus minutes was March 21st against Utah. He scored just under 21 fantasy points.
Yeah,
So
I mean
maybe
that would
expect that
that would get the
as
job done at
right,
3K.
exactly. It's not like he's
Yeah.
mid 4K or anything like that anymore.
Yeah. Yep. So in terms of the guys up top, Kevin Durant, he has been phenomenal as of late. Like it's kind of down to a point where if Kevin Durant has a strong game scoring, he has a really good chance at scoring 70 plus fantasy points because his assists and rebound rates are so high over the last month. He has 30 more assists than anybody else on this Nets team. Second is Goran Dragic, who's out here, so maybe we see a even higher assist rate for Kevin Durant. And then he has the second most rebounds over that stretch of time as well, behind only Andre Drummond. So he's just doing so much across the board and through all of the stat categories so that if he does have that 35, 40 fantasy or real point performance, he has a really good shot at scoring 70 plus. And we saw that the other night against the Pistons where he scored 41 actual points and had 72 DK points. So Kevin Durant is my top spend up option. I think he has the highest ceiling, but in terms of point per dollar, I do think now that Kyrie and Durant are somewhat comparable, especially on FanDuel, where Kyrie's only 9.2. It's a very interesting price tag. I think that on FanDuel, Kyrie's a bit of a better play. I still think Durant's ceiling is higher, but at $1,600 cheaper, Kyrie has a similar ceiling, maybe a little bit lower, but in terms of on a point per dollar scale with that ceiling, I think it's pretty similar. So what are your thoughts on comparing those two guys?
Yeah, I agree. Durant, just because the rebounds and you mentioned the assists, especially as of late, like I still prefer him. And then like on DraftKings, Kyrie and Trae Young are right around the same price. I mean, Trae Young's $300 more. I'd rather play Trae Young, who we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, I don't. The question, I guess, is are we going anywhere else from Brooklyn other than 3K Patty Mills, Durant, and Kyrie Irving? Like Drummond's been playing well. I still think his minutes can be a little bit tough to trust. Like he can play 28, 29 like he's been. But then like Nick Claxton, like it wouldn't surprise me if there was a game where Nick Claxton and Drummond just split the center minutes. But like I'd rather play Drummond at 6K than Capella at almost 7K because Drummond has probably a better, even with John Collins out, it feels like Drummond's minutes are safer than Capella's, who've been pretty much limited the last 2 months of the season.
Yeah, so I think the decision between the two centers is pretty important here because it's not like we have a lot of high end centers. It's a 3 game slate. You don't really have a lot to work with. In terms of projections, Drummond is projecting as the best point per dollar center on the board, and he also has the highest player rater amongst the centers for me in my model. So I do like Drummond, and I think that you make a really good point on the minutes. Like it does feel like his minutes are a bit uncertain now, but I actually feel I don't know if this is weird, and I guess maybe you can kind of correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but I actually feel better about his minutes now because like 2 weeks ago, when we saw him at times having those really strong, per minute performances, and then we would see him pop into, top of the leaderboards, he was at times getting like 17 or 18 minutes. Now it feels like the floor is probably closer to like 22, 23.
Hmm.
Last game we saw him play, what was it, 29 in the overtime game, I believe it was. And I know he played, I think, 30 minutes in the game against Detroit. Or 28 minutes and then 31 against Charlotte. So I feel actually better about his minutes now from a floor perspective. I feel like they're more projectable now. And that means I do think his ceiling is a bit better. I still think that they're going to be inconsistent because he can play 30 or he can play 23. So I like Drummond quite a bit here. But if you don't have Drummond in your lineup, I think you should automatically increase your interest in Nick Claxton. It's a 3 game slate.
Right.
Crazy things can happen. We saw Claxton close that overtime period last time out. I mean, I don't think he's going to get more minutes than Drummond, but if Drummond gets into foul trouble or if it's one of those games where Drummond only plays 21 minutes, Claxton's a direct beneficiary of that. So Claxton and Drummond are interesting. If you don't have Drummond, I think Claxton should kind of get a boost for you.
Yeah. The only, like, I would feel like 100% confident in Drummond if, like, Aldridge wasn't in the lineup. He's still playing around, or no, Aldridge hasn't played in a long time.
Yeah.
Claxton is who I meant to say. Claxton is splitting the center minutes essentially like he had been. But like you said, there was a time where it was like you were hoping for Drummond to get to 24, but now you're kind of hoping he gets to 28, 29, 30, and you're expecting 23, 24. And like double-digit rebounds, I think, in 4 or 5 straight games now. And he has always been a good fantasy point per minute player. And like even with Durant and Kyrie, like Drummond's assists have been like there's been a couple 4 assist games lately. I think Drummond's perfectly fine. I think it's a great point though. Like on a 3 game slate, like if you have no interest in Drummond, it does make sense to get to Nick Claxton, who's also been, relatively productive on a permanent basis this season too.
Yep, exactly. And like you mentioned, we haven't really seen Aldridge in the rotation at all, and that's just been he was injured for a while, and then it was a coach's decision. And I guess the uncertainty of that potentially changing any night is possible. But I actually gave Aldridge some minutes tonight just because they are just shorthanded in general as a team. So with that being said, like I have him for like 11 minutes or something, 12 minutes, and I still have Drummond for about 26 and Claxton for about 21 or 22. So, yeah, I think again, Drummond was the guy that I would prefer, but Claxton I think should definitely have interest in if no Drummond. Woolsey's asking Edwards or Thomas, and then I guess so. Let's compare Edwards, Thomas, and Mills real quick because it's kind of looking what the questions are shaking out to be. So, how do you feel about those three and kind of compare them?
Yeah, Patty Mills is definitely first for me. Edwards, you said is starting, correct?
Yep.
I feel like I like if I knew Cam Thomas and Kessler Edwards were both playing the same amount of minutes, I would obviously prefer Thomas. But right now, I feel like you would probably lean towards the player that's starting, and that's Edwards. So I think I'd rank it Mills, Edwards, Thomas.
Yeah, I agree. If I knew that, like if I knew all three of these guys were in the same minutes, I would for sure lean Thomas. But as of now, I have Thomas for the least amount of minutes. I have Mills at 32, 33. I have Thomas at 20 or 21, and then Edwards at like 26. So with that being the case, I still think I like Thomas more than Edwards, just because I think he'll be lower owned since he's not starting. And Edwards is a pretty low usage guy.
Yeah,
We've seen him get
Thomas will shoot like
yeah,
when he's out
for
there.
sure. And we've seen Edwards, like when he gets time, like they give him a lot of time at times, but I still think if he's not going to get like 34 minutes, I still think I would prefer Thomas. Like if they're both going to be in that 22 to 24, 25-minute range, I think I would prefer Thomas just because he's, I think, the higher ceiling guy.
Yeah.
All right. Anything on the Atlanta side that you want to point out? We did get their starters. It's going to be Young, Herter, Hunter, TLC, and Clint Capella.
Yeah, Capella's been pretty efficient, but still, like, I know a couple, each of the last two games, I believe, have been blowouts. So, like, you look at their last two close or closer games before that, he was at 31 and 31 minutes. I just still think it's possible he plays 26, 27, and in that case, I'll take the $700 savings to go to Drummond. The matchup is fine. But obviously, Trey Young's where you start here. His usage rate with John Collins off the floor has been around 35%. He's been, obviously fantastic. We're seeing, I talked about this the last stream I was on, but we're seeing him get anywhere between like 8 and 15 assists almost every game. But with John Collins out, he's now scored at least 30 real points in three of his last four of his last six, it looks like, with two 40-point games in that stretch. Brooklyn's been a bottom five defense against isolation this season. I'm not worried about the matchup for him. So I do, Trey Young's easily the number two play from this team. I like him a lot more than Kyrie. Like Okongwu, again, efficient player. He's been giving this team great minutes all season, but his minutes, he's literally played the entire fourth quarter in each of their last two games, both of which have been blowouts. Not expecting a blowout here against Brooklyn, so that makes me a little bit worrisome about Okongwu. And then I kind of had an interest in Kevin Herter, given the matchup for him. 5,300, like, you would prefer some of the other wings to be out, but like he's still probably going to play anywhere between like 30 and 33 minutes. At 5,300, he'd probably be my third favorite player from this team behind Trey Young. Like, it's so tough when the wings are all healthy. I know Collins is out, but you still have Gallo, you still have Bogdanovich, you still have Hunter, and like you mentioned, TLC starting. Maybe TLC might be my second favorite, and then Kevin Herter, because he's played 30, 23, and 27 minutes, giving you right around 23 fantasy points per game, 22 fantasy points per game, 3,400. Again, small slate.
Yeah, I didn't have him expected to start, so I'll have to rework the minutes there for TLC, that is. But another guy who historically he hasn't been like, I guess more so down this year, but in the past, like we've seen him put up some decent permanent performances, and like that's all you can really ask for a punt value guy on a 3-game slate, right? So even though I don't know if he'll go out there and play like massive minutes. We saw him play 33 minutes or 3 games ago, but 27 last game and 24 the game prior. He scored 10 actual points or more in all 3 of those games. So I do think that TLC he's definitely a much better play now, obviously, that he's starting. It'll be interesting to see like how he compares to, the Nets guys and maybe some other guys on the slate. But also, it's not really a slate where you need to jam in like several punt guys under 4K. So yeah, at the end we'll kind of come back and we'll talk about the forwards in general. But as of now, like someone's asking about PJ Tucker, I would prefer TLC over PJ Tucker. I think PJ Tucker's power forward only on FanDuel, and Ezekiel's asking for FanDuel, but yeah, PJ Tucker's still in play on FanDuel. But if you can play TLC over him, I would prefer that option there. But Pat Williams or Caleb Martin, do you have a preference between those two?
It's hard not to go Pat Williams. I know he played, he got overtime run last game, but if he was where he's priced now, I think 3,400, and we still expected 25-minute limit, I'd have interest given the slate. But him playing a 37-minute game in overtime tells me that the minutes limit is pretty much gone. And again, is he going to be a massive usage player with this team, especially starting? No, but at 3,400, given the rebounding production he gives you, some of the stocks he gives you, I would prefer Patrick Williams.
Yeah, me too. I really don't even have Martin for all that many.
Everybody's healthy.
Minutes.
Like
Yeah,
finally, everybody's healthy for Miami. Like literally everybody, right? Like Oladipo's even healthy. Tucker and Jimmy Butler for the first time in like 7 months weren't on the injury report ahead of today's game. Like everybody's healthy.
yeah, definitely. And Ricky did point out that Caruso was out last game, and then obviously the overtime game, which you mentioned. But I mean, it doesn't change anything for me. I just don't really have a lot of interest in Martin. I have Martin for like 18 minutes, and I have Williams for like 26. So definitely Williams over Martin for me. Let's move on to the next game. Obviously, it's not going to be as much of a game by game focus, but we'll answer questions here. But Miami and Chicago, anything that's sticking out to you in this game? Obviously, we were just talking about Williams, but what about these guys up top? Any interest there?
I mean, it's going to be a relatively slow-paced game. DeRozan coming off a huge game, 8,600. Like, the price tag is fine. I think my favorite play from this game is probably Bam. 8K for Bam. He's giving you that floor pretty much all the time. Chicago is currently bottom 5 in points per game to the roll man in the pick and roll. They also allow the highest frequency rate off the play type. We've seen centers have success against them. So Bam's probably my favorite play from this entire game, right there with, I guess, Patrick Williams. And then you have, Vucevic under 8K, Levine at 7,400. Like, there's ceiling opportunities for pretty much the main 3 from Chicago, because for a long time this season, like, all 3 were right around 9K. And it was like, okay, when they're all healthy, they can have ceiling games, but it's unlikely that all 3 go off. But, again, 3-game slate, it's tough to, even on a 3-game slate, it's tough to say like they're some of the best plays of the slate. But I think Bam is probably my top play from this game.
Yeah, I agree. Bam's also my top play from this game. I do think that some of the Chicago guys have interest from a ownership standpoint. Like, I don't think any of them really will get all that popular. Maybe Levine on DraftKings, because he's pretty cheap over there, 7,400. But Levine, Vucevic, I think will be super low owned in comparison to some other players on not only in the position, but
he's right between Bam and Gobert too. Like,
yeah, and like it's a 3-game slate, so like 20% is probably pretty low in terms of ownership. But what about any of these other guys on Miami that you're obviously, you mentioned Bam's your favorite play, but anybody else?
I mean, like, Lowry's really affordable at 5.7. Like, if you wanted to go there, Tyler Hero has a ceiling. He's been playing right around 32 minutes. It's just this, like I said, like this morning I was like, okay, with Vincent, Caleb Martin on the injury report, and Strus, like maybe Duncan Robinson, but now I don't have really any interest in Duncan Robinson. So, like, again, Butler and Bam, like, the floors are always pretty high, but I think you can find close to higher ceilings or higher ceilings or close to ceilings right around their price tags and other spots. So
Yeah, I agree.
Like I'd rather play Jordan Poole over those guys.
Yeah, and like Lowry, I guess the price is fine. I did put him in the article just simply because of the price, but he's I mean, I just don't really have a lot of interest. I just don't think he has much of a ceiling. And if I was targeting one of these mid-range cheap players, it would be Hero for me. Um, Hero, I think Hero will get extremely overlooked. He's been pretty bad recently, and I think a lot of it is just mainly just bad shooting as of late. And with that being the case, like you have a guy who has 50-point upside. We've seen it several times, even when Jimmy and Bam are in the game. And he's still been able to do it at times. And now you're talking that kind of caliber player, sub 7K, sub 20%, maybe even sub 15%. Like Hero is definitely a guy I have some interest in. I would definitely rather play Hero over Lowry. Jimmy Butler's probably a better play than Tyler Hero. So if you have Butler, like it's probably difficult to do that. But in terms of a contrarian option, I do think Hero should not be counted out. But let's talk about the last game real quick. Any interest, or I guess any key priorities other than, I guess, Jordan Poole? You made a pretty nice little foreshadow there. Oh, anything else in this game?
Yeah, Jordan Poole, 30% usage rate over the last 8 games. He's right now almost a lock to take 20 shots. I know Klay Thompson's, going to play in this game as well, but it's, with Jordan Poole, it's not even just the shot attempts, it's the assist opportunities he's seen lately. He's been getting really strong assist numbers and rebounding numbers, playing massive minutes. So, and it's weird. He's coming off a game where he scored over 64 fantasy points, and his price dropped from 8,200 to 7,200. So,
Yeah.
just an absolute misprice there on Jordan Poole. I think we're going to get to a point, as long as he finishes out this season, where the last couple games where Draymond is underpriced at 5.6. So if you got the Draymond, it's just, we know Draymond has not going to ever be a 15 to 20 field goal attempt player, but it's even with Curry out, it's still weird to see him only taking like 3 to 4 field goal attempts. Um, it's just strange, but like he does enough peripheral wise, more than enough peripheral wise. And if he takes, like if Draymond takes 10 field goals in this game, he's probably gonna score like 45 fantasy points, assuming he doesn't go over 10. So I think there's interest for me there. And then the other side of this game, I mean, Donovan Mitchell, 8,400. You can argue he has a higher ceiling than some of the players from the Miami Chicago game that we just talked about. So I would lean Donovan Mitchell there as well. But like Utah is pretty healthy. Like they were missing Bogdanovich for a while. Hassan Whiteside is available to play, so looks like he could return. So this team is pretty much as close to 100% as they've been. I mean, Gobert 7-6. We know the double-double is pretty much a lock. It just depends on if he's scoring 12 real points or, like last game, 25 real points. But I really don't ever not have interest in Gobert. And Golden State has been like a bottom 5 team in points per game off putbacks for the last couple seasons. And that's, Gobert's bread and butter. I believe only Mitchell Robinson has more points per game off putbacks than Gobert. So it does set up nicely for him. Plus, obviously, relatively, relative pace up spot.
Yeah. The main thing that sticks out to me is Jordan Poole. Like you mentioned it, the price. It's just
It's
bad
just
price.
very, very questionable.
It's just wrong. I mean, he scored 64 points last game, and his price went down
Even if he
$1,000.
scored 40 fantasy points in that game, like
Yeah.
it would still be wrong.
Yeah, and I'm sure like it has something to do with slate size and all that stuff, because obviously they want to be able to have people be able to like fill lineups, but still definitely just the wrong price. I did list Draymond as my fade. I do think he gets some ownership after a decent game last time out, and I just don't see it like I mean, I guess he can still get it done with assists and rebounds and some defensive stats, but I'll take the chances on
He
fading
he
a
obviously
chalky
missed a lot of
Draymond.
time, but he hasn't taken 10. He hasn't had double digit field goal attempts in a game since December 20th.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to expect anything else other than that from him. So, anything else in the scheme you want to touch on?
I don't think so.
All right, let's see if we can find some questions here. Easy B asked. He asked Ricky this, but he asked how much Bummin do you have? Do you have any? Do you have a number on Drummond? Anything that you like in terms of ranking your centers? Where do you put Drummond?
I would put him. I would go Bam. I'd probably have him third.
Okay.
I think I still lean Gobert. It
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me if Drummond was the highest scoring center. Not that it's a loaded center slate, but like when he plays minutes, he's fantastic. We know this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe there's a way he gets a few more minutes here in this spot, but even if he like doesn't get like a monster minute ceiling game, he can still get it done on a per minute basis. We know that with Drummond, so he's my number one center. But again, like in lineups that I don't have him, the first person I'm like looking at the position is Claxton, because like I think that's just a really good leverage right there. And Drummond's going to have some ownership, so really good leverage there. Full game stack type of night, Brooklyn and Atlanta. So in my opinion, the smaller the slate is, the more viable game stacks are. So I could see it, and obviously if I was doing it, it would be with that game for sure.
I think the total this morning was like 240 something. So
yeah, let me see where it is now. 240.5 right now. So
yeah, and you have like the studs from this game, and you have value, right? You have Patty Mills, you have TLC, you have mid range, like you have Drummond at center as a mid range who could potentially be a value. So not only is it a great game environment, but there's players from kind of every price range too.
Yep. You got some guys asking Herm some questions, but we'll answer and we'll jump in. Bojan or Herter for DraftKings single entry?
I would lean Bogdanovich. I just think his minutes are. I think they're a little bit safer, but he's also a little bit cheap. I'll slightly lean Bogdanovich. Assuming it's Bojan, right? Not Bogdan.
Yeah, Bojan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I slightly lean Herter, but I don't think it's a big deal. And I think maybe Bogdanovich's ceiling is even a little bit higher. But TLC or Pat Williams? We talked about this one a little bit. What are your thoughts there?
That's tough. I think I would slightly lean TLC.
Yeah, same here. It's very slight. And no, I think I would go Pat Williams.
It's because I think Patrick Williams has a higher ceiling, but like I think TLC has a better chance of playing. Like again, that game went to overtime. He played 30, 35, 36 minutes, but Caruso was out. TLC played 27 minutes in their last game against Cleveland, which was a blowout. But like I said, like I think if the game's close, he can play 32, 33 minutes, and I think he probably takes. I don't know, like the ceiling for both players in field goal attempts is probably like 12, but I think TLC has a better chance of getting there than Patrick Williams, given who he plays with right now. I know Trae Young's didn't take a lot, but Trae Young's also going to facilitate a lot. So,
yep. Easy BS, Cam Thomas or PJ. I answered PJ. I have PJ for like a point higher, but I kind of think that Cam Thomas is the lower owned ceiling play, but I would still prefer Tucker. I just think he's a little bit safer.
Yeah, I agree. But like I said, if Cam Thomas gets the minutes today, he's going to take shots. And like we know PJ Tucker's like a 9% usage player, but if he walks into rebounds, and again, I think he's still leading the NBA in 3-point percentage, which is absurd, but like he's been hitting his corner threes. So if he hits those and walks into rebounds, he's gonna be good. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, we've hit lock. It's 7:30, but so let's see what game. I don't even know what game's locked. Let's see here. I know the Brooklyn game locked. That's the only game that locked so far.
Yep.
So if anybody has any questions over the next couple of minutes on those last two games, we can touch on them. But yeah, I mean the first game is probably the big one, and it's out of the way. But let's. I actually want to pull up ownership real quick because I'm curious. I assume it's going to be a lot, though.
Yeah.
Would you rather have Capella or Drummond?
Drummond.
What if I told you that Drummond was 43% owned and Capella was 13% owned?
That makes things a lot more interesting because, like I said, like Capella's minutes are still not 100% trustworthy, but in their last two close games, he was at 31 minutes both games, and then Okongwu played the entire fourth quarter of their last two blowouts. So like that might change things for sure. That's a massive difference. And again, like Capella hasn't been 35 minutes very often this season, or at least the second half, but it's not like he's, especially with John Collins out, like their entire, pick and roll offense is going through Trae Young and Clint Capella, and we know he's, one of the better rebounders in basketball. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think the ownership makes it appealing. But I don't know. I think if I was going to look for leverage off Drummond, it would be with
like if they
Claxton.
both play 28 minutes, I would be stunned if like Drummond scored like 15 more fantasy points. Like they both project pretty similarly.
Yeah, that's fair. O'Neal or Tucker? I would prefer Tucker.
Yeah, with Bogdanovich back, I mean, O'Neal still plays minutes anyway, but I'll lean Tucker. They're both similar. They hit occasional corner threes, but I think Tucker does a little bit more.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of ownership, we have 3 guys over 40%. You have Kevin Durant at 49.33, Patty Mills at 49.32, Drummond at 43.8, Trae Young's at 33, Herder's at 29, and Kyrie's at 23. I mean, if you played Kyrie over
Herder
Durant,
at 29 is more than I thought.
yeah, but Kyrie versus Durant, I think that's not bad leverage either.
No, I mean we've seen Kyrie can have a 60-point real game and it wouldn't shock anybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like if Kyrie scores say he scores 40 plus real points, like a lot of Kyrie's baskets aren't going to be assisted because it's a lot of ISO and just kind of clearing out for him. So like Durant could still have a good fantasy game, but like I don't know if you're gonna see like a double-digit assist game with Durant if Kyrie has like a huge scoring game, unless they leave him open in the corner, which would be not wise.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost a full percent of people played Seth Curry. Blake Griffin was 0.3% owned. Dragic was 0.05%. Cam Thomas was 15%. That was, I don't want to say higher than I thought because it's a 3-game slate, so it's not that crazy, but he's more popular than Edwards, and TLC only got up to 10%, and Claxton's only 7%. So that Claxton ownership I do like.
Yeah, like I think he plays at worst like 22 minutes, and he's under 4K. And then if something happens, foul trouble, whatever, and Drummond's minutes come down and Claxton's by default go up, all of a sudden the Drummond game you were looking for could go to Claxton at what you said 7%.
Yeah, 7. Yep.
Yeah, especially like Claxton's always been an interesting kind of pivot on most slates since Drummond's been there because he still plays the minutes, but especially on a 3-game slate where Drummond is popular, it's even more interesting.
Yeah, Josh is asking about Strus. I'm actually really curious to see where Strus's ownership comes in. He was questionable for a minute, and then you had, I think Vincent was ruled in, but I don't know if Vincent plays a whole lot. And then you had Martin ruled in. Everybody ruled in essentially, but Strus is starting still, so I still think he's interesting. So I'd be curious to see where his ownership lands. And then Josh also asked, Bam, Rudy, or Vooch? Who would you prefer?
Bam.
Okay. Like overall, I would also prefer Bam, but from an ownership perspective, I think Vooch will be like half the ownership of both of those guys. So if you are looking at a chalky lineup and you wanted to get some leverage, I would prefer Vooch, but Bam is definitely number 1 there for me. If he needs 2 of them, I would prefer Bam and Vooch, but not that I think Gobert's a bad play. I just think the low ownership on Vooch is super appealing.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, I think all 3 of those guys are actually pretty similar options, with Bam being like slightly better than all of them. So Josh said no chalk. He missed every guy from the first game. Oh boy, you're behind the 8 ball, Josh.
Better hope for like a 2005 final score of like 79-74 or something.
Yeah. But
it's always funny seeing those like replays of games, and it's like the Pistons and Spurs in the finals, and it's like
Yeah.
84-80 at the end of the game. It's like even some overtime games are like 89-86. It's like crazy to even think about seeing. Like you see that score at the end of a game, and you're like, oh, third quarter just ended. Like no, that
Yeah.
was the end of the game.
Or the second quarter.
Yeah.
But I mean, I will say, Josh, to be optimistic for you, on a 3-game slate, fading the first game that has massive amounts of chalk, like obviously you're doing it in a single entry, that's probably not ideal. But if you had a few lineups, that wouldn't be the worst scenario. Hope maybe for a blowout or underwhelming game. But yeah, I wish you the best of luck. But Adam, any final words here?
No, man, just wrapping up this regular season. We got baseball starting soon, which is very exciting. So make sure you check out all the content that we're going to have, live stream shows. You just did a first look article I read today, and it was weird. Like I read it, and I was looking. This is going to happen to me a million times. Like when I see a team name abbreviation, I'm going to say a basketball team for like the first month of baseball. So. But no, baseball's here, so more great content, streams, tools, everything. Baseball, I feel like, especially for tools, is so important because it's such a tough sport, but the tools are massive for baseball.
Yep, and we have, I think, like 4 different models up on the site. Between Alex has a pitcher model, I have a home run model, which is like a home run predictive model.
Yeah, we had that last year, right?
Yeah, we had. It was late. It came out late last year, but we had the stacking model all year, and then obviously the player model.
That home run predictor was pretty damn accurate too, I must say. Like more often than not, some players from that tool were homering.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it. And then I ended up reversing it too to like see which pitchers would be more likely to give up a home run. So it was cool. I highly recommend using it. MLB is my probably my favorite sport from a DFS perspective, just because you can take all these numbers from anywhere and make all these cool metrics and tools and all that stuff. And it's been a blast, obviously, over the last 2 years with FTN being able to put this stuff on the site. But we do have our early bird package up still, so get in on that price before that goes away. I would be lying if I said I know when. I'm guessing probably before opening day. So get in there while you can. And like Adam mentioned, I did just do the first look article. DraftKings, much like Jordan Poole's pricing, absolutely botched some of their pitching pricing for opening day. It is bizarre how bad it is. But there's like 3 names that have really, really bad pricings. But it should be a fun slate. But also, you just launched another new podcast. Now you have 13 of them here. Is it DataCast or DataCast? How do you pronounce it? I'm curious.
I pronounce it DataCast.
Okay. See, I think that rolls off the tongue better, but when I just say the word, I say data. But DataCast, I think sounds.
It's actually weird though. When I've been announcing the pod and talking about it, I've said DataCast, but when we plug like FTN, I say FTN Data.
Yeah.
That's really weird now that I think about that.
It's
but
probably,
yeah,
because it rolls off the tongue better.
Yeah, but Tyler Lochner and I are it's pretty much going to be fantasy football podcast talking about everything, news, start sit, DFS, dynasty, all this stuff. But we're focusing a lot on the FTN data that we have on the site. So a lot of the premium stats tools, like we're going to tie all of those tools and numbers and all that stuff into every episode of the podcast. So it's not just going to be like, yeah, I like, this player this week because this team gives up X amount of fantasy points to wide receivers. We're going to use the awesome tools and stats we have on the site and apply it to the podcast. So our first episode we're recording Sunday night. It'll be up Monday, and that will be fun. So look out for that as well.
Yeah, and I know we're doing a lot of fun back end stuff for the FTN data stuff for other sports as well. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun in the upcoming future. But that's going to do it for us. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us on a Saturday. Hopefully you have some good luck on this 3-game slate. And shout out to, I want to say his name right. I think it's A. Doomy. Took down 10K on the 2-game slate earlier today. So shout out to A. Doomy for that awesome takedown. And then Alex Blickel had a nice little 10X day on the golf streets. Just saw that on the Twitter machine. So shout out to the FTN guys bringing home some dough, and hopefully that can continue with tonight's games. But we'll see you guys next time. As always,
let's get these beans.